Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Business to Business Marketing Communication, Chapter number 13, Part 1. After reading this part, you should be able to describe communication theory, describe the main problems in planning a campaign, explain how attitude change models can be used in planning a campaign. Introduction. This chapter is about ways of communicating in business to business markets. The major difference between business to business and consumer marketing communication is the lack of mass media for businesses. Consumer marketing communications are heavily dominated by internet, television, radio, and press advertising. But business to business advertising is less likely to use these media due to the much smaller number of buyers involved. B2B versus B2C marketing communications. Because business to business markets are smaller than consumer markets, some restrictions will apply. Table 13.1 shows the main differences. Of course, business to business and consumer advertising also have a great deal in common. But when we look into the differences, consumer markets have availability of mass media while B2B markets have mass media of little use. There is greater use of emotional appeals in consumer markets while more rational appeals are used in business to business markets. There is greater tendency on the part of consumers to avoid the message in consumer markets, while greater preparedness to seek out information is available in B2B markets. Selective retention means that communications are quickly forgotten in consumer markets, while communications are frequently stored for future references. Brochures, advertisements, and leaflets may be filed away in B2B markets. Copy is almost always short and punchy, usually just 10 or a dozen words in consumer markets. But copy is frequently long, even to 1,000 words or more in B2B markets. So these are the differences which are obvious in B2B and B2C communication. Communication theories. Communication theories has been dominated by Shrem model of communication, see figure 13.1, a model which is familiar to most students of communication. In this model, the sender of a message first needs to code the message in order to send it. This code will need to be something the receiver can understand. For example, it must be in a language the receiver knows. There must be a medium for the message to travel through, for example, internet, television, or print, and the recipient must be able to decode the message. Inference and noise will affect the way the message is transmitted and interpreted. So here is a kind of model of communication with which most of the students are familiar. Communication theories. The problem with this model is that it implies that communication is something that is done to people rather than a cooperative process. A more modern view of communication is that is a co-construction of meaning in which the person receiving the message interprets it in the light of previous experience. In this model, communication is an active process on both sides. The input from receiver is at least as great as that from the transmitter, and the message is likely to be interpreted in many ways by each different receiver. So the pool of meaning, if you look into this model, pool of shared meaning, this model implies that communication creates a pool of meaning between the parties. Each person puts something into the pool, each person takes something out, and the pool changes slightly each time. Signs and meaning. A sign is anything that stands of something, is object to somebody, is interpreted in some respect, is context. Signs fall into three categories: icon, index, and symbol. An icon is a sign that looks like the object or represents it visually in a way that most people would relate to. For example, an agricultural machinery manufacturer might use a stylized picture of a tractor as a symbol, or might use a picture of a head of wheat. Is shown in figure 30.3. You can see this figure: an icon, index, symbol, semiotics, the study of signs; syntax, the structure of communication; semantics, the relation of signs to reality; meaning, the result of processing signs. So all these factors are studied in communication. Silent communication. Meaning is conveyed not just by words, but by the way the words are used and by the peripheral cues that surround them. Much human communication is made for effect rather than is a literal statement. People become adept at reading between the lines. For example, numbers. Brand names frequently use numbers to imply that the brand is the latest in a long series. Boeing uses this method to identify their aircraft models. Space. Images of people standing close together imply that they have a close relationship. Some companies have placed their logos in close juxtaposition to indicate that they have a close relationship. Artifacts. Small gifts and free samples convey a sense of obligation to the recipient. Time. Images of a person in a hurry might convey an image of success and energy to Northern Europeans or Americans, but might convey arrogance or someone who has no time for anyone else to an African audience. Kinetics. Gesticulating, facial expression, and body language will convey meaning. Attitude and attitude change. Attitude is a learned tendency to respond in a consistent way to an attitudinal object. Attitudes are made up of three components: cognition, affect, connotation. Conation. Conation, sorry. Cognition, which is what is consciously known of and thought about the attitudinal object, while affect, which is what is felt emotionally about the attitudinal object, and conation, which is the intended behavior toward the attitudinal object. So attitude means three factors: cognition, affect, conation. Cognition, what is known; affect, what is felt; conation, what is intended. Provided these three components are in balance, the attitude is stable and is therefore unlikely to change much. For example, a buyer might say, I like Core Steel. They are nice people to deal with. The products are always up to the specification, and I think we will probably always buy from them rather than from anyone else. The first phrase of this statement is affective. I like them. They are nice people. The second part is cognitive. The products are always up to the specification. And the third part is conative. We will probably always buy from them. Note that conation is only intended behavior. Other factors may intervene to prevent the behavior using being carried out. Other factors may intervene to prevent the behavior being carried out. Changing attitudes. Because attitudes tend to be stable, the first essential for attitude change is to destabilize the attitude. This means changing one or more elements of the attitude. So, what are these elements? We can change the attitudes by adding a new salient belief, change the strength of a salient belief, change the evaluation of a salient belief. How we can do it? Changing attitude, the first one is add a new salient belief. For example, the BE advertisement mentioned earlier tried to add the belief that a personal contact is worth far more than even the glossiest brochure. Change the strength of a salient belief. If the belief is a negative one, it can be discounted or played down. If it is a positive one, it can be given greater importance. For example, a buyer may believe that a firm is reliable and this may be important, but a set of statistics showing that the firm is 99.7% reliable will strengthen the belief by providing factual evidence. And change the evaluation of a salient belief. The importance of an existence belief can be strengthened. Using the reliability example, the buyer may accept that the firm is reliable, but has not realized that is this in turn means that buying firm's production has never been halted due to a failure on the part of the supplier. Unlike other suppliers whose unreliability has resulted in large loss of production. This type of argument moves reliability much higher in buyer's perception. Thank you. That's all for the part one. Thank you.